The first explosion tore through the cold vacuum of space with silent violence. On the edge of the Orion expanse, the Earth Defense Fleet, just 47 ships in total, was already scattered, dodging plasma bolts that burned brighter than a blue supergiant. Captain Elena Ramirez gripped the side rail of the command deck as her ship, the ISS Valiant, shuddered under near-miss fire. "Shields down to 20%. Lieutenant Harris yelled, her voice cracking with panic. "Return fire," Ramirez shouted. "Target their sensor arrays." The view outside her viewport was chaos. Hundreds of angular, obsidian-colored ships from the Zandari Dominion loomed like an unstoppable tide. The enemy had deployed 3 full armadas, nearly 10,000 vessels, against what they considered an annoying insect swarm. Multiple target locks incoming. Tactical Officer Singh barked, eyes wide as new threat indicators flooded the hollow display. "Divert all power to evasive thrusters," Ramirez snapped. "Keep us moving, zigzag pattern. Make their targeting AI work for it." The ship lurched hard as the Valiant twisted out of a direct hit. Warning klaxons howled as another blast rocked the starboard side, causing the forward shield grid to flicker and die. "Direct hit on deck 3. Engineering Officer Cho called out. "We're venting atmosphere. Seal the bulkheads. Reroute power to the main shield emitters." Ramirez's voice cut through the panic. "We're not done yet." On the bridge of his Zandari flagship, Supreme Commander Vectal Creel stood with his 4 eye stalks lazily tracking the fleet status projections. His voice, thick with disdain, echoed through the command chamber. "Pitiful resistance," Creel sneered. His translator module softened the guttural consonants of his native language into something almost palatable for the Council observers who monitored the battle remotely. "Begin Phase 2. Eliminate their command vessels first. I want this resolved within the hour." His adjutant, Subcommander Ryvek, stepped forward. The Zandari officer's translucent skin pulsed an amused shade of green. "Yes, Supreme Commander. T'avais-tu solution loquette?" Creel waved a clawed hand dismissively. "End this farce." The order transmitted instantly across the fleet. Thousands of Zandari warships shifted formation, focusing their fire on the handful of Earth capital ships still operational. Down on the Valiant's bridge, Singh's console lit up like a festival display. "Sir, they're concentrating fire on us and the Roosevelt." Ramirez grimaced. "Hail, Admiral Stone." Static burst from the comm for several seconds before the weathered face of Admiral Marcus Stone appeared on the small inset holoscreen. His uniform was stained with smoke, and a gash ran along his temple. "Captain Ramirez," Stone said, coughing. "Looks like they've finally noticed us." "Orders, sir?" she asked, struggling to keep her voice steady. Stone allowed himself a bitter smile. "We're buying time for the evac transports. Every minute we hold, 1,000 more civilians get clear." Ramirez nodded. "Understood." The transmission cut out just as a barrage of plasma beams sheared the Roosevelt in half. Admiral Stone's ship, it's gone. Harris whispered. "Focus," Ramirez barked. "Keep us moving. Launch countermeasures. Fire off every remaining torpedo at their forward elements." The tactical screen was a blur of red enemy markers. The Valiant's engine screamed under the stress of sudden course changes. The deck plating under Ramirez's boots vibrated as damage reports flooded in. 3 more of our ships just got wiped out," Singh shouted. "We're down to 9 vessels." Cho added. On the Zandari flagship, Ryvek turned toward Creel, tentacles shifting in curiosity. "Supreme Commander, I'm detecting unusual signal modulations from the human ships." Creel barely glanced up from his personal console. "Let them scramble. These last moments are always messy for primitives." "No, sir," Ryvek said, narrowing his eye stalks. They're coordinating their point defense grids in an unpredictable pattern. Targeting algorithms are failing to lock." Creel paused. "That was unexpected. Have the fleet recalibrate. Increase targeting variance. Saturate their vectors with overlapping fire." Ryvek nodded and issued the commands. Thousands of Zandari ships adjusted their firing patterns, turning the surrounding space into a glowing lattice of deadly energy. On the Valiant, Cho shouted over the din. We've got 30 seconds until our reactor goes critical if we maintain this power draw. Then give me 31 seconds of life support. Ramirez yelled back. Captain, Singh called from tactical. Incoming comm burst. Unencrypted. It's from Earth, from General Halvorsen at Command Central. On screen, the face of General Eric Halvorsen appeared. Wrinkles lined his eyes, but his expression was steel. To all surviving fleet elements, initiate Protocol 09. Gasps filled the Valiant bridge. Is he serious? Harris whispered. Ramirez stared at the message. Protocol 09 had never been used outside of simulations. Confirm the order, she snapped. Already confirmed, Singh said, his voice shaking. Then do it, Ramirez said. Initiate 09. Now, within seconds, deep in the ship's core, dormant systems activated for the first time. Along the fleet, 9 remaining Earth ships began transmitting a synchronized burst of encrypted signals toward the outer edge of the Orion expanse. On the Zandari flagship, Rivek's console shrieked with warning tones. Sir, the human fleet is transmitting something. We're detecting localized dimensional stress points, gravitational anomalies forming around their ships. What nonsense is this? Creel growled, stepping closer. Explain. I can't, Supreme Commander. The energy signature is unstable. It's spreading, multiplying. Creel's voice dropped to a near snarl. Raise shields across all ships. Full power. In space, the first of the distortions rippled outward like invisible shockwaves. Zandari ships nearest to the humans suddenly disappeared from all sensor arrays. What just happened? Rivek screamed. One by one, Zandari vessels began going dark. Entire squadrons vanished without a trace, as if swallowed by empty space. Creel's eye stalks snapped in all directions, staring at the deteriorating fleet readouts. Report. Where are my ships? Unknown, Supreme Commander. Rivek shouted. 93 ships gone in the last minute. No debris, no escape pods, just gone. Creel's clawed hands clenched into fists. This was not predicted. On the Valiant, Ramirez exhaled slowly as her tactical screen updated. Status? She asked. Singh's voice trembled. First wave complete. Enemy losses now at 600 and counting. 600. That was more than anyone had dared hope for. Ramirez steadied herself. Prepare for second activation. Push the waveform higher. But Captain, the structural integrity. Just do it, she snapped. On the Galactic Council's observation station in neutral space, representatives from dozens of species sat in stunned silence. Massive holographic projections displayed the ongoing battle, transmitted live from Zandari fleet channels. Counselor Arvex of the Vrani Alliance leaned forward, his 3 mouths hanging open in disbelief. Impossible. The Zandari deployed over 9,000 ships, and now, entire battalions are vanishing. Counselor Velri of the Sithra collective hissed through needle-like teeth. How is this? At the center of the chamber, Council Chairwoman Kalesa of the Dravari spoke at last. Open a secure channel to Supreme Commander Creel. Now, back aboard the Zandari flagship, Creel's blood ran cold as the casualty number skyrocketed. 900 ships, 1,000, 2,000, Rivek reported, his voice cracking under disbelief. The Supreme Commander slammed a fist into the console. All remaining ships, retreat to minimum safe distance. Full warp burn. Get us clear of the human fleet. But, sir, if we turn now, their warp disruption fields DO it. Creel bellowed. Rivek issued the evacuation orders, but it was already too late for hundreds more ships. The humans weren't following known battle doctrines. They weren't holding ground or defending territory. They were consuming. Somehow, on the Valiant, as the ship's frame groaned under strain, Ramirez allowed herself a grim smile. How many now? She asked. Singh's screen blinked red. Over 3,000 Zandari vessels gone. Captain, they're retreating. Cheers erupted on the bridge, but Ramirez didn't join in. They'll be back, she said quietly. But next time, they'll think twice. The last thing she saw on her display before power fluctuations forced a systems reboot was this. Zandari losses, 3,742 ships. And climbing. The Valiant's lights flickered as auxiliary systems struggled to compensate for the reactor stress. Sparks burst from an overhead conduit, sending a spray of glowing metal across the bridge. Ramirez barely flinched. "Engineering, report," she called out. Cho's voice came back strained but alive. "Reactor stability at 12%. If we push another 09 burst without cooldown, we risk a full core collapse." "We don't get second chances, Cho," Ramirez said. "Give me everything you've got." Across the remains of the Earth fleet, the surviving ships were struggling with the same reality. Their experimental weapon, born from desperation and human stubbornness, wasn't designed for sustained use. The 09 protocol had been rushed into deployment, barely tested. But right now it was working. Singh's console pinged with a new alert. "Captain, incoming transmission. It's a Galactic Council. Priority channel." Ramirez raised an eyebrow. "Put it through." The main view screen shifted to show the imposing figure of Council Chairwoman Kalesa. Her scaled blue skin shimmered under the Council chamber lights, her 4 golden eyes narrowing as she studied Ramirez. "Captain Elena Ramirez of Earth," Kalesa began, her voice cold and measured. "By Council decree, you are ordered to cease the deployment of your anomalous technology. Immediate surrender of your fleet is required." Ramirez allowed herself a bitter chuckle. "Surrender? After what we've just done to the Zandari?" Kalesa's gaze sharpened. "You're destabilizing an entire quadrant of Council space. The disappearance of over 3,000 Zandari vessels has consequences." "We didn't ask for this war," Ramirez said flatly. "And we sure as hell didn't start it." Kalesa's voice dropped to a low, dangerous tone. "Then you'll be held responsible for ending it, or face annihilation." The transmission cut out. Ramirez turned toward her crew. That didn't sound like an offer. On the Zandari flagship, panic had set in. Supreme Commander Creel slammed his fist against the tactical console, sending 2 of his junior officers scurrying for cover. "Council interference be damned. Regroup all available units. We'll crush their fleet before their anomaly destabilizes the sector any further." Ryvek hesitated. "Sir, with all due respect, our losses are unprecedented." "Do it," Creel roared, his tendrils trembling with fury. "We have superior numbers, technology, firepower. These humans are bluffing." Ryvek swallowed hard but obeyed. Within minutes, nearly 6,000 Zandari ships had repositioned, forming a 3-pronged pincer formation around the remaining Earth vessels. Creel pointed a shaking claw at the main display. "I want full-scale assault. No merci. No delay." On the Valiant, Singh's face paled. "They're coming in, hard. Full surround formation." Cho added, "Our reactor's still below critical minimum for another 09 pulse." "How long until we can fire again?" Ramirez asked. "Best case, 10 minutes, Cho said. "Worst case, we explode before that." "We don't have 10 minutes, Harris whispered. A grim silence settled over the bridge. Ramirez stood straighter. "Then we buy those minutes the only way we know how. All ships, prepare for close-range combat. Deploy every drone, every missile, every decoy we have left." Singh blinked. "Captain, you want to engage them directly?" Ramirez smiled thinly. "That's exactly what I want." The first wave hit like a tidal surge. Zandari strike craft swarmed toward the Earth fleet in tight formations, their plasma cannons tearing through the void. The Valiant's railguns fired at maximum speed, ripping apart smaller attackers. But for every enemy fighter destroyed, 3 more took its place. Forward shields failing. Harris called. "Switch to kinetic armor mode." Ramirez ordered. The ship groaned as its last resort plating engaged. Hull stress indicators went from orange to red in seconds. On the Roosevelt's sister ship, the ISS Kestrel, Captain Darius Okoye was orchestrating his own desperate defense. "Flank left," Okoye yelled. "We're going to punch a hole through their right wing." The Kestrel's forward cannons lit up the darkness, carving through enemy ranks. But the Zandari adapted quickly, focusing their fire on the Kestrel's engines. "We've lost lateral thrusters," Okoye's engineer shouted. "Divert all power to main drives." Okoye yelled back. We go down swinging. The Kestrel slammed into a formation of Zandari corvettes, taking out 5 ships in a final, brilliant explosion. Back on the Valiant, Singh's console flashed with new data. Captain, the Kestrel's gone, but wait, something strange. The Zandari formation is breaking pattern. Ramirez stepped closer. Show me. Singh overlaid real-time analysis on a holo display. Their fleet AI is lagging. Response time is off by nearly half a second. It's like they're compensating for something, sensor disruption maybe. Cho's eyes lit up. Or residual waveform effects from 09. Captain, even after the pulse ended, the dimensional field disturbances may be scrambling their network targeting systems. Ramirez's mind raced. Meaning, Cho grinned. We can get closer than they expect. Ramirez's smile matched his. All ships, close the gap. Full burn toward the enemy's center. We're going to fight this like old-school brawlers. The sudden aggression from the battered human fleet took the Zandari by surprise. Earth ships weaved between plasma volleys, using debris and even disabled enemy vessels as cover. Close-range point defense cannons shredded Zandari fighters. Missile salvos detonated at near-suicidal distances. On the Zandari bridge, Ryvek shouted over alarms. Supreme Commander, the humans are inside our formations. They're fighting at knife range. Creel's eye stalks bulged. Pull back reserve wings. Box them in. Ryvek hesitated. Sir, the reserves are recalibrating shields after the last anomaly wave. They're still vulnerable. I don't care, Creel roared. Reinforce the perimeter. Do it. Ryvek's trembling fingers danced across his console, but it was too late. A coordinated strike from the Valiant and 2 escort frigates detonated the Zandari command cruiser at the heart of their right wing. The shockwave rolled outward, disrupting formation cohesion across the enemy fleet. 500 more Zandari ships disabled. Singh reported. Captain, they're falling apart. From her command station, Ramirez saw the opening she needed. Is the reactor ready for another 09 burst? She called. Cho wiped sweat from his brow. Barely, but if we push it, we probably won't survive. Ramirez's voice dropped to a determined whisper. Then we make it count. Turning to the comm station, she opened a fleet-wide broadcast. Her voice rang steady and defiant. To all Earth vessels, this is Captain Ramirez. We're executing one last pulse. You know what that means. Hold your positions, brace for impact, and remember who you're fighting for. A chorus of affirmatives answered back, shaky but resolute. Cho initiated the 09 sequence. Deep within the Valiant's core, containment fields strained as the anomaly generator reactivated. Pulse charge at 90%. 95, full power. Cho shout that. Fire. Ramirez ordered. The second 09 burst erupted like a localized tear in reality. This time, the effect radius tripled. Entire Zandari battle groups vanished mid-maneuver. Hundreds of ships dissolved from every sensor network, leaving only eerie afterimages on fleet monitors. Even the Galactic Council observers watching remotely lost visual feeds as thousands of Zandari vessels simply blinked out. On the Council's central monitoring station, Chairwoman Kalesa stood frozen. Confirm what just happened, she ordered. Her aide scrambled. Counselor, it appears that over 5,000 additional Zandari vessels have ceased all transmissions. No debris detected. No life signs. Nothing. Another counselor stood abruptly, knocking over his data tablet. This is genocide on a scale. We can't let this continue. Kalesa's voice hardened. Summon an emergency council session. Effective immediately. On the Zandari flagship, what little remained of the command crew descended into chaos. Ryvek pulled himself upright, staring at the casualty reports streaming across his console. Supreme Commander, total fleet losses now exceed 9,000 ships. More than 90% of our deployed force is gone. Creel slumped into his chair, his breathing shallow. We were the unstoppable. We were. His voice faltered, trailing into silence. The flagship shuddered as damage alarms signaled multiple core failures. "Sir," Ryvek whispered, "orders." Creel stared at the image of the human fleet, still burning, battered, but alive and advancing. For the first time in his career, Creel had no orders left to give. On the Valiant, Singh's console lit with new data. "Captain, the Zandari, they're pulling back. Full retreat vectors, across all remaining units." The bridge erupted into cheers, but Ramirez lifted a hand for silence. "Status on our fleet?" Singh replied, "We've got 5 ships still operational, barely. Damage across the board. We're down to 20% total capacity." Ramirez nodded slowly. "Survivors? Counting life pods now? Casualty estimates still climbing." She closed her eyes for a brief moment. Grief could wait. For now, they had won. As the human fleet drifted among the wreckage of 2 armadas, a final transmission burst across all open frequencies. It came from Creel himself. "This is Supreme Commander Creel of the Zandari Dominion. To the Galactic Council and to Earth, I formally request immediate ceasefire negotiations." Ramirez stood on the Valiant's bridge, staring at the message. She allowed herself a long breath, then turned to her crew. "Prepare for new orders," she said quietly. Because this was just the beginning. Her gaze shifted back to the hollow display, where the remnants of Earth's tiny fleet held formation, surrounded by the silent graves of 9,900 Zandari ships. The Valiant's medical bay was overflowing. Crew members with plasma burns, shrapnel wounds, and radiation exposure lined every available space. Ramirez walked through the chaos, her uniform stained with soot and blood, offering words of encouragement where she could. "Captain," Dr. Patel called, motioning her over. "We've stabilized most of the critical injuries, but we're out of med-gel and portable blood since. I'm prioritizing burn cases and decompression victims." Ramirez gave a tight nod. "Do what you can, doctor." She made her way back to the bridge, ignoring the dull ache that throbbed along her ribs. Every step was a reminder that they weren't out of danger yet. Singh greeted her with a grim expression. "Captain, we've received a new transmission from Earth Command." "Let's hear it." General Halvorson's image filled the screen. The deep lines around his eyes looked deeper than ever. "Captain Ramirez, Council surveillance confirms the Zandari have pulled back, but our analysts predict they'll regroup and return in force within the next 72 hours. Our intelligence also suggests several Council member species are now considering direct intervention." Ramirez folded her arms. "Meaning we won one battle, but now the whole galaxy want a piece of us." Halvorson nodded. "Exactly." He paused, then leaned closer to the camera. "We're authorizing escalation of Protocol 09. Full wave deployment." Ramirez blinked. "Sir, we've never done a full wave test. Not even in simulations." "I know," Halvorson said, "but we don't have time for caution. Earth has launched the rest of the anomaly-capable fleet. You'll rendezvous with them at the Vega Drift in 20 hours. Hold your position until then, no matter what." The transmission ended. Silence settled over the bridge. Cho finally spoke. "A full wave 09. That's suicidal." "Maybe," Ramirez said, "but if it gives us a shot at survival, we'll take it." Meanwhile, on the Galactic Council station, panic spread like wildfire. Councillor Velry slammed her fists on her desk. Over 9,000 Zandari vessels gone, and now Earth plans a full-scale deployment of this dimensional weapon. Kalesa held up a hand. "We still don't fully understand their technology. Our science division is analyzing what little data we've intercepted." Councillor Arrogance interjected. "And what happens if they turn on us next?" The Sithra Collective has already declared Earth a Class A threat entity. They want preemptive action. Kalesa's golden eyes narrowed. "We'll convene a vote. But understand this. Any Council fleet sent against Earth will face the same fate the Zandari just did." The chamber fell silent. The weight of that truth settled over every representative. Back aboard the Zandari flagship, Supreme Commander Creel stood in his private observation chamber, staring at the endless stars beyond. Ryvek entered quietly. "Sir, the Council is debating intervention. They've sent envoys to over 15 member species, rallying for a joint strike force. Creel's voice was low. Good. Let them. Ryvek blinked in confusion. Sir. Creel turned, a bitter smile curling across his mandibles. The Council won't risk its own fleets. They'll send volunteers, mercenaries, privateers, piecemeal forces with no central command. And that helps us how? It buys us time, Creel said. Time to understand what these humans have done. I want every science vessel redirected. Full spectrum analysis of the anomaly field. I want answers before their next wave. Ryvek hesitated, then nodded. As you command. 12 hours later, at the Vega Drift, Ramirez watched as the reinforcements arrived. 30 new ships, fresh from Earth's last operational shipyards. Each one retrofitted with the unstable, barely tested anomaly generators based on 09 technology. Captain Okoye's replacement, Commander Layla Chun of the ISS Resolute, hailed Ramirez. Captain, Chun said, her face pale but determined. We're online and ready. Orders. Ramirez allowed herself a small, proud smile. We hold this line, Commander. No matter what comes. Sensors lit up instantly. Multiple warp signatures incoming. Sync called out. Council fleet elements. Looks like Sithro war cruisers. Vrani assault platforms. Even independent pirate battalions. Over 2,000 ships in total. Cho swore under his breath. They've thrown everyone at us. Ramirez took a deep breath. Then let's make them regret it. The enemy hit hard. Vrani assault pods spewed boarding teams directly onto Earth's ships, their spider-like exosuits skittering through hull fractures with terrifying speed. On the Valiant, Ramirez led her crew in brutal close-quarters combat, firing pulse rifles and wielding plasma cutters like medieval swords. In orbit, Sithra cruisers unleashed focused beam weapons, slicing through two of Earth's smaller destroyers in seconds. Captain, the ISS Dauntless just went dark. Singh reported. Ramirez wiped blood from her cheek. Target that Sithra cruiser with everything we have left. Missile salvos roared through the void, striking the enemy vessel amidships. Secondary explosions rippled along its hull, forcing it to break off. Across the battlefield, human ships fought like cornered wolves. Small, fast corvettes darted between Council vessels, laying mines and launching hit-and-run attacks. Cho's engineering teams worked miracles just to keep the anomaly generators from tearing their own ships apart. Captain, Cho called. The next wave is charged, but the resonance frequency is fluctuating. If we fire now, we risk catastrophic feedback. Ramirez clenched her fists. Can we target just their lead formation? Cho hesitated. Maybe, but it'll reduce the effect radius. Do it, Ramirez ordered. The next 09 burst exploded outward. Sithra cruisers, Vrani assault platforms, and half a dozen pirate carriers vanished instantly. One moment, hundreds of Council-aligned vessels had been closing for the kill. The next, they were gone. No wreckage, no survivors. Council fleet communications descended into chaos. Back on the Council station, Chairwoman Kalesa stood as reports flooded in. 700 ships, lost in under a minute. An aide whispered. The Council chamber dissolved into shouting and accusations. This is a threat to galactic stability. We must authorize total planetary sterilization of Earth. Deploy quantum annihilators. Kalesa raised both hands, silencing the room. Enough, she said. Earth has crossed every known line of warfare. They've introduced an extinction-level weapon, without warning, without Council sanction. Counselor Velry stood. Then what's your solution? Kalesa's gaze hardened. We send a final directive. All available fleets. Every mercenary, every sanctioned warlord, every Black Flag fleet. Full force. A ripple of dread passed through the chamber. The full weight of the Council? Arvex asked quietly. Kalesa nodded once. Yes. On the Zandari flagship, Creel received the update. Ryvek's eye stalks quivered. They're actually doing it, deploying the entire multi-species fleet. Creel's mandibles clicked in thought. Let them. The humans will either burn the galaxy down with them, or finally burn out themselves. But sir, what if they survive? Creel smiled bitterly. Then we'll negotiate, on our knees if we must. On the Valiant, Singh turned from his console, pale as death. Captain, new readings, thousands of warp signatures, more than 25,000 ships incoming. The full Council War Coalition. A stunned silence fell over the bridge. Harris whispered, We can't fight that. Ramirez stared at the data, her face unreadable. Then she smiled. Ready the fleet, she said quietly, and prep the final 09 arrays. We finish this one way or another. As the first Council warships began dropping out of warp, the battered, burning remnants of Earth's fleet turned to face them. Against impossible odds, against logic, against the known laws of warfare, the humans prepared to fight again. And this time, they weren't just defending Earth. They were making history. The blackness of space became fractured with light as over 25,000 Council warships dropped out of warp around the Vega Drift. The sensor feeds on the Valiant turned from scattered red markers to a solid wall. Ramirez stood on her damaged bridge, staring at the tactical display that now resembled a solid crimson ocean. Cho's voice cracked from engineering. Reactor at 40% stability. If we initiate a full 09 chain reaction, there's a non-zero chance we collapse the entire sector. Singh looked up from tactical, his face ashen. Captain, their lead formation is locking weapons. All frequencies, all species, all guns, on us. Harris whispered what everyone felt. We're out of miracles. Ramirez's eyes narrowed. We still have one left. She opened a fleet-wide channel, her voice reaching every battered human ship still drifting in formation. This is Captain Elena Ramirez to all Earth vessels. Final stand protocol. Authorization Sigma Romeo 0. There was a pause. Then confirmation lights flickered across the screen. Every surviving Earth captain acknowledged. There would be no retreat. Cho's voice shook. We're really doing this. Ramirez exhaled slowly. We're doing this. Aboard the Council flagship Seraphon's Will, Council Chairwoman Kalesa stood at the observation deck, surrounded by high-ranking military strategists from every species. A Vrani general spoke first. We estimate less than 20% functionality across the human fleet. This will be over in minutes. Another commander, a Sithra admiral, bared her needle-like teeth. Firepower ratio exceeds 100 to 1. They'll disintegrate on first volley. Kalesa stared at the display, watching the tiny cluster of Earth ships, damaged, smoking, but still holding formation. They've chosen suicide, she said coldly. So be it. She raised her hand. Commence full-spectrum bombardment. In the heart of the Vega Drift, light itself seemed to hesitate. Thousands of Council ships opened fire in perfect unison. Plasma waves, antimatter charges, gravitic destabilizers, and beam lances all surged toward the human fleet, converging into a blinding wall of destruction. The first Council salvo struck and passed straight through. What the hell? Ryvek whispered aboard the Zandari flagship, staring in disbelief as Council weapons phased through the human fleet as if it wasn't even there. They missed, another officer gasped. No, Creel muttered, leaning forward. That wasn't a miss. Council sensors recalibrated frantically, only to report the impossible. The Earth fleet's energy signature was shifting, warping, splitting across multiple localized dimensional points. They're out of phase, Creel said, his voice shaking. They're existing in overlapping coordinates. Quantum drift alignment. Ryvek's skin pulsed gray with terror. Sir, that's beyond theoretical physics. That's human, Creel finished grimly. Back on the Valiant, Cho's voice rang out. Phase shift holding. Dimensional cloak stable at 60%, but burning out fast. How long do we have before we snap back? Ramirez asked. Maybe 2 minutes tops. Singh called from tactical. Council forces are recalibrating their targeting. They'll adjust in 60 seconds. Ramirez nodded. Then we hit them first. With what? Harris asked. We're dry on torpedoes, and our railguns are offline. Ramirez smiled tightly. We don't need conventional weapons. She pointed at Cho. Begin cascade sequence. Fire 09. Full array, directly into their fleet core. Cho hesitated. Ma'am, that'll overload our field. It'll take us with it. I know. Across the council formation, new alarms sounded. Energy buildups registered from multiple human vessels at once. But the anomaly signatures weren't following predictable dispersal patterns. They're creating a resonance field. A Sithra scientist stammered aboard the Seraphon's will. But it's amplifying exponentially. We're seeing cascade harmonics we've never. The words cut off as the first detonation hit. A ripple of space-time distortion tore through the Council Fleet Center, engulfing 3,000 ships instantly. Vessels twisted, bent at impossible angles, then vanished. The cascade spread, faster than Council ships could escape. Communications dissolved into panicked screams and fragmented distress calls. Pull back. All forces retreat. Spatial integrity failing. Engines offline. We can't jump. Aboard the Council flagship, Kalessa watched in horror as more than half her fleet blinked from existence. This can't be happening, she whispered. She turned toward her advisors. Signal the humans. Immediately. Offer ceasefire terms. Anything they want. A trembling communications officer tried, but the human fleet wasn't answering. Instead, the energy field intensified. Kalessa's last order before her ship's systems collapsed was a single word. Run. On the Valiant, lights dimmed as systems overloaded. Field destabilizing. Cho shouted. Ramirez stood at the center of the bridge, eyes closed. All hands. Brace. The ship shook violently. Then silence. Moments later, as power returned, Singh gasped. Captain, external scans coming back online. The tactical display reactivated, but there was hardly anything left to display. The Council fleet, 25,000 ships gone. Vaporized. Vanished. Erased. Only a handful of human vessels remained, barely operational, drifting quietly in the wreckage-strewn void. Harris blinked back tears. Did we just? Ramirez opened her eyes, her voice quiet but steady. We did. A new incoming transmission blinked onto Singh's console. Captain, it's the Council. Ramirez raised an eyebrow. Put it through. Chairwoman Kalessa's battered, bloodied face appeared on screen. Smoke curled behind her. Emergency lights flickered across what little remained of her flagship's bridge. Her voice, for the first time, was small. Captain Ramirez, this is a formal request for immediate, unconditional ceasefire. Full diplomatic concessions. Total withdrawal from all human sectors. And recognition of Earth as a sovereign power. Ramirez stared at the screen for several seconds before answering. Terms accepted, she said simply. On one condition. Kalessa's shaking lips parted. Anything. Ramirez's gaze hardened. You will never, ever, come for us again. Kalessa nodded, slowly. Then the transmission cut. On the Zandari flagship, Creel sat in stunned silence. Ryvek approached cautiously. Supreme Commander. Council fleet losses are total. They've conceded. Creel closed his eyes, exhaling slowly. Prepare our surrender package. Full diplomatic apology. And send a message to Earth requesting terms for a non-aggression treaty. Ryvek paused, then asked quietly, Permission to speak freely, sir? Creel nodded. Ryvek's voice dropped to a whisper. How? Did we miscalculate so badly? Creel's eyes opened, tired, hollow. We didn't miscalculate, Ryvek. He said softly. We underestimated. On Earth, news broadcasts interrupted every channel. Images of Council warships disintegrating, the final Council surrender, and the human fleet holding position above Vega Drift filled every screen on the planet. Crowds flooded the streets in every major city, cheering, crying, embracing strangers. In the war room at Earth Command, General Halvorsen stood before his staff. Mark this date, he said. It's the day humanity stopped being the prey and became something else entirely. Back on the Valiant, Ramirez stood alone on the observation deck. Stars glittered beyond the viewport, silent witnesses to what had just occurred. Her uniform was torn, her body aching, but her spirit remained unbroken. She lifted her comm link. Fleet Command, this is Captain Ramirez. Mission complete. Awaiting further orders. For a long moment, there was no reply. Then, a single line of text appeared on her console. Welcome to the Galactic Table, Captain. Ramirez allowed herself one small, tired smile. And with that, she turned to face whatever came next. The Council's Grand Assembly Hall, once a place of calculated diplomacy and strategic debate, now felt like a funeral. Where once 100 voices spoke in measured, political tones, now only 30 remained. Dozens of counselors gone, entire planetary representatives, erased with the fleets they had sent. The room's massive hollow display showed a rotating tactical replay, looping endlessly, the final moments of the Council fleet above Vega Drift. Thousands of ships, gone in less than 10 minutes. The air inside the chamber was heavy. The usual polished arrogance was absent. No speeches, no debates, only stunned silence and haunted eyes. Chairwoman Kalesa sat at the head of the chamber, pale and visibly aged beyond her years. The fine scales on her neck, normally vibrant gold, had dulled to a sickly gray. She stood slowly, her voice hoarse. This session of the Galactic Council is now called to order. The few remaining counselors lifted their weary gazes toward her. Counselor Velry was first to speak. I submit an emergency motion, full reclassification of humanity to level black existential threat. There were no objections. The motion passed, unanimously, in less than 30 seconds. At a smaller side table, two Sithra scientists spoke quietly, their voices low to avoid attracting attention. One of them, Dr. Laris, tapped nervously at her datapad. I've reviewed the anomaly signatures, traced them back to their origin point. Earth's Lagrange for research facility. Their entire 09 project was built from recovered derelict tech. The second scientist frowned. Recovered? From where? Laris swallowed hard. Deep space, anomaly fields, debris collected beyond their Oort cloud. Unknown source. Pre-council era. The other scientist froze. You're saying they reverse engineered this? Without understanding the original technology. Laris nodded. And they deployed it anyway. Another nod. Silence. Finally, the second scientist muttered, Gods help us all. In a private chamber beneath the council hall, a smaller group had convened. High-ranking intelligence officials, black ops commanders, and shadow counselors from species that rarely showed their faces publicly. One of them, a veiled representative of the Vrani War caste, spoke first. If we strike now, we could send covert agents to sabotage Earth's research facilities, disrupt their anomaly production pipeline. Another, from the Sithra Inquisition, shook her head. We've already tried. 3 infiltration teams, all missing. No telemetry, no exit signals. Just vanished. A Xandari intelligence chief spoke next, his voice cold. The humans anticipated counter-infiltration. Their planetary defense grid has evolved rapidly. Silence settled again. Then, a low voice from the shadows spoke. Counselor Arvex. There is another option, he said slowly. The room turned toward him. Arvex's slitted eyes gleamed. We shift tactics from overt warfare to containment. Containment? Velry Isid. How does one contain something that can erase fleets? Arvex leaned forward, his voice calm, terrifyingly calm. We cut them off. Full embargo. Full isolation. Deny them trade. Deny them resources. Deny them knowledge transfers. Let them rot behind their own sun. The Vrani representative sneered. That won't stop them. They'll develop even faster under pressure. Then, Arvex said softly, we delay until we find something stronger or until their own weapons consume them. A slow, reluctant murmur of agreement filled the room. Kalesa, still seated above them all, closed her eyes. The human containment protocol is authorized. On Earth, months later, a memorial service unfolded at Unity Square. Captain Ramirez stood beside General Halvorsen, overlooking the endless rows of flags. One for every fallen ship, every crew lost. Humanity had won, but at a staggering cost. Speeches rang out over loudspeakers. News drones captured the event from every angle. The entire planet watched. Children sat on shoulders. Veterans saluted. Families wept. And beneath it all, engineers continued to work deep underground, perfecting the next generation of 09 technology. Later that night, Ramirez stood alone atop the defense tower, staring at the stars. Council's gone dark. Trade routes cut. Communications monitored. Blockades forming at every jump gate. Ramirez nodded slowly. Let them. They're afraid of us now, Cho said, trying to smile. Ramirez's eyes remained fixed on the stars. They should be. She turned, walking back inside. As the doors closed behind her, a final classified transmission blinked onto her secure console. It was from an observation post beyond Pluto. New anomaly detected. Unknown origin. Inbound trajectory. Estimated arrival, 26 days. Ramirez stared at the message, then smiled grimly. So it begins again. She powered down the console and left the room, ready for whatever came next.